Righto, welcome to another one of my videos. As always, all of the resources that I refer to are on my Google site or in the Google Classroom, or there are videos about these concepts on my YouTube channel. So the Unit 1 explained video, this is to help you prepare for the Unit 1 exam and help you to revise, and we'll go over some common feedback and some advice. Unit 1 is a synoptic unit. It assesses all of the media theory and deconstruction skills that have been acquired in all of the units on the BTEC so far. Anything could come up. So Unit 4 theory, Unit 1 theory, Unit 10 theory. This unit, the exam, is worth 90 guided learn hours. There are 360 guided learn hours in the 2 years in total. So therefore this unit is worth a quarter of your entire qualification. The student will need to get a distinction in the exam to get a distinction star overall. The exam itself will last for 2 hours, and the exam is out of 80 marks. As a rough indication of time, if you have 120 minutes from the 2 hours, and there are 80 marks available, that works out roughly at 1.5 minutes per mark available. So for example, on a 2-mark question, you should be spending about 3 minutes. On a 4-mark question, you should be spending about 6 minutes. And remember, there are 10 and 20-mark questions towards the end of the exam. You need to make sure you've left yourself enough time for that. So for example, in a 20-mark question, you should probably be spending about 30 minutes on that response. In the exam, you will be shown a series of unseen text, which could be moving image or print, or a combination of both. You could be shown more than one unseen text. The exam specification says that each examination will have a particular focus. Possible topics for those focuses include gender, ethnicity, age, social groups, places, and consequently, the media text chosen for each exam will always feature representations from one of those topics. It should also be noted that distinction level responses will need to be supported by detailed textual analysis references and sophisticated analysis of the effects and consequences of the representations that are being shown in the texts. Therefore, you must engage with the wider media landscape and expose yourself to as many different media products as you can and bring them into your responses on the day. That's why we've been working on those case studies in lesson, and you've been investigating TV shows, films, video games, tabloids, broadsheets, adverts, PSAs, that you could then bring into an exam response, despite not being shown them by the exam as the unseen texts. The case study we've referred to as a shield. If you don't have a case study, it's going to hurt, okay? If you've got something in your case study prepared, something that is stereotypical of a particular representation or demographic, then you're going to be able to use that in the larger questions. The larger questions are often more open-ended and not referring to the text that you've been shown by the exam board. There are a series of past paper questions available on the Google site. Some 10 and 20 mark questions are on the screen at the moment. There will be some common areas that will repeat over time. So for example, representation of age, femininity, masculinity, stereotypical characters, genre codes and conventions, representation of sexual orientation, objectification of certain demographics, in particular femininity. Media effects debates that deal with behavior and attitudes, and how many media products can be read in multiple different ways. There is a mark scheme for the 10-mark questions that you should be familiar with, aiming towards the level 3 level band, which in the 10-mark question is the highest, which deals with your media terminology being fluent, confident and accurate, a wide range of relevant examples carefully selected to meet the needs of the question, and the discussion of the representation in relation to the chosen text accurately offers detailed and sophisticated possible meanings. In respect to the 20-mark questions, there is a level 4 band, and again you should be looking at fluent and confident and accurate media terminology, thorough knowledge of the relevant theories in terms of media theorists whose names you should be referencing in your answers, developed reasoning, looking at debates, balancing your arguments and coming to some sort of conclusion. Things to ask about each media product that you get shown and the media products that you are therefore deconstructing in your own responses. Is the representation conventional or stereotypical? If it's not, does that make it countertypical? What demographic and what concept is being represented itself? What psychographics might be applicable? Explorers, mainstream, strugglers, aspirers, succeeders. What media theorist can be used when deconstructing the product? It's highly likely there will always be a media theorist's name present in your response, possibly 2 or even 3. Is there an opportunity for evaluation? What are the risks of that representation? Are there alternative viewings that you could talk about in respect to Stuart Hall? What is the intended dominant reading? What could a possible negotiated or oppositional reading? Is there instances of polysemy where semiotics would suggest there's more than one meaning for you to suggest? Some common feedback and some common advice from previous years. You must refer to specific products in the exam, okay? Don't say things like in James Bond films, in tabloids, in the media, which is perhaps the worst umbrella term to use. The media is so many things. You can't say in the media. In television is still quite broad. In video games is also quite broad. You're not going to hit the higher level bands. These aren't specific references to media products. The exam board have told you not to do this. We've seen it in many examiners' reports that we've read in the past. These are much better. In the James Bond film Casino Royale, in the specific scene where something something, in an issue of The Sun that reported on immigrants, something something something, in an episode of Sex Education where a specific scene referred to something something something, in Call of Duty, which is a specific reference to a media product, not saying something like in video games. In the government PSA, binge boy or binge girl, in the scene where, don't say generic things like all PSAs, all perfume adverts, all tabloids. You need to specifically refer to instances of these platforms. This is why your case study is important. Don't waste opportunities to name drop media theorists, and I don't mean force them in randomly. There will be an opportunity almost every single time to refer to at least one media theorist. So you've got quite a few to refer to that might be relevant at any given time. Laura Mulvey, Richard Dyer, Andy Medhurst, Stuart Hall, Stan Cohen, Levi Strauss, Prop, Todorov, Barthes. Any one of these media theorists should probably be able to make their way into almost every response. Sometimes there may well be opportunities to refer to more than one, particularly referring to stereotypes. You could probably talk about Dyer and Andy Medhurst, for example. Answer the question correctly. This might sound obvious and a silly thing to say, but there will be specific things the question will be looking for. And if you talk about other things that may well be correct in the wider world, if it's not answering the question, you might not get any marks for it. So for example, some of the smaller questions in particular will be asking you about something specific and will expect specific media terminology to be used. For example, if the question asks about mise-en-scene, don't talk about editing techniques or special effects. You should be talking about props and costume and body language and setting and lighting, okay? If the question does ask you about editing transitions, then don't talk about the connotations of color, okay? Talk about cuts and match cuts and transitions and crossfades, okay? Talk about what the exam question is asking you to talk about, especially in a 2-mark question, because there's only 2 marks available. You won't get 3 and 4 and 5 marks, even if you do talk about things that are correct but not relevant. Evaluate for the higher level bands. Remember, nobody cares about your actual opinion. Don't say things like, well, I think this and I think that. But you can pass your opinion off as possible alternative readings or other interpretations. So you could say something like, a dominant reading could be, however, an alternate reading could be, an oppositional reading could be, and there's an opportunity to talk about Stuart Hall, reception theory, and alternate readings theory. You could also say things like a feminist could interpret this text differently. A Marxist could interpret this text differently. Your opinion might be in there somewhere, but you've been able to use media theory to suggest those possible readings. Semiotics, you could say this connotes or this has connotations of. But if you've got a sign that has multiple meanings, polysemy, then you might be able to say another connotation could be, or another interpretation of this could be. Use audience theory to evaluate. An explorer might think this, however, an aspirer might interpret this text differently. A mainstream psychographic could look at this text from this point of view, and this could appeal to ABC1 audience members in this way. So use audience theory to evaluate the text as well. Not knowing key definitions, you will be throwing marks away if you don't know how to use certain words, especially if a 2-mark question asks you to explain a certain word, okay? So all of the media theory, all of the subject terms, all of the words in the glossary are available on the Google site. We have flashcards available. Print these, save them onto your phone, stick them around the house, test yourself on them, have someone else test you on them. Make flashcards, write on the front of a piece of paper, write on the back of a piece of paper, and use these definitions and memorize them. Another thing to bear in mind, you can prepare for this exam. You should be preparing for this exam, okay? Being lazy and not revising for the exam is going to impact your grade, okay? There's a wide range of resources for you to use. The Google site, all of my lesson slides for lessons you've attended and lessons you've missed. You should be going over these in your own time. My YouTube videos, there's a number of videos that I've recorded to explain certain concepts. Wider study tasks, are you engaging with them every week? Are you just doing them to tick a box, or are you going back to previous wider study tasks and repeating those for retrieval? Past paper questions, all of the past papers are available on the Google site, including all of the unseen texts. Your case study, are you adding to it? Are you fleshing it out? Are you memorizing it and revising it? The case study is there to protect you. You should be using text from your case study in your responses. The digital exam practice workbook, where we've been writing past paper exam question responses and structuring key answers in key paragraphs. The little purple book and the flashcards, you should be revising from these. Other than that, you should be revising for this exam, and good luck.